Okay, good morning, friends. It's a special pleasure for me today to invite Dr. Ashwani Kumar. Most of you or all of you know him already for maybe far longer than me, but I've also known him for many decades. He's currently director of VCRC at Puducherry and has been there since 2019. He's a long-time friend and now recent collaborator of NIMR. He was previously at NIMR at the Goa field unit, which he, as you know very well, the Goa field unit has done incredible amounts of work in malaria control as well as in basic research of malaria, parasitology, as well as vector biology. So all the credit for that obviously goes to Dr. Ashwani Kumar, and now he's going to be presenting to us his thoughts on vector control in regards to his first love, which remains malaria, as he's told me. So a great pleasure to invite you to NIMR. Thank you very much, and we're really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Dr. Amit. Thank you.
So before we start, I would like to mention here this is another lecture under our distinguished lecture series, and this lecture is special for two reasons. One is this is first in-person distinguished lecture after the COVID pandemic thing, and second is this is for Dr. Ashwani Kumar. This is back home, so these are two reasons, especially for him, and we are very delighted to have him here as a speaker. So before we start, for the audience, I would like to do a brief introduction about Dr. Ashwani Kumar. He is the director ICMR Vector Control Research Center, Puducherry, India. He served in India in NMR for 32 years before moving to VCRC as a director in year 2019. He is also adjunct professor of Georgetown University, Washington. He is a PhD with specialization in entomology and has over 35 years of experience in the field of vector-borne diseases, covering basic, applied, and operational research projects. He has authored over 143 research articles, reviews in journals of national and international repute, including Lancet, PLOS, NTD, Malaria journals, Parasite, and Vectors. He has written and edited 4 books, including in 2016, a handbook of WHO vector surveillance and control at ports, airports, and ground crossings, which is translated in 11 languages. He has 4 patents to his credit. His WHO international assignments includes advisor WHO, vector control advisory group at WHO headquarters at Geneva. He's advisor WHO and in evidence review group global malaria program, WHO, international expert on vector control tools for malaria elimination, ICE Global, University of Barcelona, Director Society for Vector Ecology, and many more. He is an advisor to Research Triangle Institute USA for their India office. He is a member of Scientific Advisory Committee of ICMR RMRI MS Patna and RMRC Gorakhpur and NMR as well. He is a member of National Coalition of Neglected Tropical Disease India. Recently, he participated as a team lead for joint monitoring mission malaria review program jointly organized by the program NVB-DCP and WHO Country Office India. In the scientific area, he believes in the participatory and motivational leadership and in networking with scientific institutions, IITs, and universities in India and abroad. With the support of ICMR, Dr. Kumar has been instrumental in launching National MSc Public Health Entomology course, which is very popular, in which 5 institutes are participating under his leadership. International Center for Excellence for Training in Entomology is being set up for VCRC for creating critical masses of entomologists in country of effectively tackle vector-borne diseases. So this is his brief introduction, and I would like to highlight here also this book is recently being launched by him, and here you can see this covers from 1975 to 2020. It's a glimpses of VCRC achievements. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Kumar. Sir, all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. Thank you, Dr. Amit Sharma, for this kind invitation. It's really a homecoming, and I'm really nostalgic to be here back in NIMR. And many of you I know, you're my old colleagues, and I have all regards for NIMR because I am what I am today is all because of NIMR. So, well, as India is progressing towards elimination, I thought it is right time to talk about role of vectors in the elimination process. And in most of the lectures that I heard on MERA platform, I think vectors were not covered that adequately. And being from Vector Control Research Center, I thought it's my turn now to emphasize why vectors are so important and why vector control is central to malaria elimination. So I'll run through some slides and okay. So first of all, I bring greetings from Vector Control Research Center in Puducherry. This is a very beautiful green setting, and VCRC incidentally got national award for being a green campus. And also from Government of Puducherry, we earned another award last year for being a green campus and also for the solar power generation and rainwater harvesting. This is the institute in VCRC, and you are most welcome to visit this center anytime. We are talking about the most dangerous animal on the earth, and that's mosquito, which actually kills more people than any other creature on the earth. And rightly so, that lot of attention has been given globally to the containment of mosquito and mosquito-borne diseases. And so much so that several tropical and subtropical countries continue to suffer under the onslaught of multiple vector-borne diseases, particularly malaria, because malaria is called king of all the diseases. It has killed more people than all the wars fought on this earth. And malaria continues to be a big challenge in many, many countries, especially Africa, where 90% of the global burden is at the moment found there. And our country is on the verge of elimination. We are progressing towards that, and we are making good progress. So you will not be surprised if I tell you that there are more than 3,500 species of mosquitoes, and there are several genera under this bracket, and anophelines, as you know, they transmit malaria. Fortunately, handful of them out of about 500 species, they are vectors. And the next slide will, this is a slide you must have seen earlier, is commonly used. About 70 species of anopheles, they act as vectors. And 30 of them are of primary nature. And there are secondary vectors. They have overlapping geographical distribution, and they have specialized niches. What is important is that they have their own biology, bioecology, behavior, liking, and of course disliking. And then they are very amenable to studies, but yet they are really challenging as far as their control is concerned. In a vast land like India, we have 6 primary vectors, 3 or 4 secondary vectors, and they are dealing with multiple parasites at the same time, which are on the left side top box, and which suggests that you see a particular species can vector more than one plasmodium species, which means that evolutionarily they have had a long association and mastery over each other. And no matter, mosquitoes have their own immunity like we have, but ultimately the parasites have the last laugh, and you know, that's why so many cases of malaria are transmitted. Oh, this is stuck again.
Change the place.
Okay. So this is again slide which is known to all of you. And you can see that the Anopheles culissifacis is the major rural vector in India. And Anopheles stephensi is an urban vector, whereas Anopheles fluviatilis is a foothill vector. And on the northeastern side, we have Anopheles minimus, Anopheles bimai, or dirus complex. And what is important is that these have their own sibling species complexes. And by definition, sibling species is morphologically similar, but biologically they are good species. So that multiplies our challenge to deal with them, because many of them are a poor vector within the same species. So therefore, we need to, in fact, go deeper into their biology to know their distribution, the ones which are transmitted, so that selectively we can mount our interventions on those species. And Anopheles sandaicus, as you can see, is now restricted only to Andaman and Car Nicobar Islands. There are two forms. One is brackish form, another freshwater form. So therefore, I remember my guru, Dr. V.P. Sharma, he brought out a book on paradigms of malaria, which is there, which you might have seen, which clearly defines the paradigms of malaria, rural malaria, urban malaria, forest malaria, and then industrial malaria, the irrigation malaria, and also very fascinating to know how these vectors operate in different bioecological situations and how they sustain themselves and what is their seasonality and all that. And I think you can only win over your enemy if you know the strengths and weaknesses of your enemies. You must know that. And that's what the science does. And the science gives us an opportunity really to study hard. And that's the principal role of entomologists, the core entomologists, to really unravel all these. And under the impact of climate change, many equations are now changing and are being redefined. As you know, as the weather patterns are changing, you are encountering flash floods, the glaciers are melting, the temperatures are rising, making some places inhospitable for the mosquitoes, and while others which are, the high altitude areas, hospitable for these vectors, so that, the window of transmission opens up in those areas. So all these dynamic changes have to be captured, and who else other than entomologists can capture these things? So how do we target? This is again not a rocket science. We know we can target mosquitoes at different levels, at the adult level and at their immature levels. They are confined when they are in water, but when they are free, obviously they have to visit you or the animals. And once they visit you, that's the time when you can have interface and you can control them. So, and besides their vectorial capacity and vectorial, importance, what is more important is that, they are source of great nuisance. Even if they are not vectoring any diseases, if they are around and they're buzzing, there's a buzz around you, I think hardly you can be comfortable. So, and they use your cues to come near you, and then this is how a mosquito sees you, the infrared vision. It is here, this is how. And they can spot which is your highly vascularized area, and to obtain their blood meal. And so it's a very interesting biology there, how they get attracted to you with a plume of carbon dioxide that you produce, the body odor that you release, and the mix of that can attract mosquitoes from a distance, even when they have not even actually seen you. And when they come close to you, then the ommatidia of their eyes, then they come into operation, and then they can, really know the heat map of your face or body, and then land themselves comfortably and suck the blood. This is very interesting science. Now, coming back to the main topic that we are talking about, the malaria and the role of mosquitoes as, in the elimination. I came across this paper by Dr. Indrani Gupta. She's a very respected economist, health economist, and Dr. Chowdhury. And what they have done, they have estimated in 2012 that India loses close to 12,000 crores of rupees every year on account of malaria. And that's a big loss as compared to the money that we invest in malaria control. So I think that makes real sense. That's the justification why we should be, besides the suffering that people have to go through and the death that one has to, embrace. So India endorsed the global technical strategy for malaria elimination, and this was in 2015. World Health Assembly and India being one of the members endorsed it. And then there was a ninth East Asia Summit in Myanmar, where our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, also endorsed this, that we need to eliminate malaria from this region and also in India. And rightly so, in 2016, 11th of February, the then Health Minister, Mr. J.P. Nadda, launched this national framework for malaria elimination. And India then started aggressively addressing this problem of malaria elimination in the country. And if you look at this roadmap, you can see that, starting 1955, when DDT was the most potent weapon to eliminate malaria, and when the global malaria eradication program depended heavily on DDT, 15 countries and 1 territory could get rid of malaria. And soon thereafter, the vectors started, particularly in tropical and subtropical area. Africa was out of it. We started encountering the insecticide resistance. And then between 1972 and 1987, only 7 countries and 1 territory could free itself from malaria. But curiously, in 20 years thereafter, none of the country could advance towards malaria elimination. And it's between 2007 and 2015, 5 countries, the smaller ones, could get rid of, malaria. And then, of course, this GSTM strategy was started by WHO based on the pyrethroids and artemisinin-based combinations. That was the confidence that, led to this roadmap for elimination of malaria in another 35 countries. And India has positioned itself in 2027 and sustaining malaria elimination for next 3 years in order to get rid of that. And let's see what progress have we made. But this particular slide will tell you, what's the difference between malaria eradication and malaria elimination. In malaria eradication, the emphasis was on the elimination of reservoir of infective cases, which means that you wanted to clean up even the last case of malaria. You have to clear up the infection. Whereas in malaria elimination, we are more reasonable and we're saying zero transmission, which we say that prevent re-establishment of transmission. So the emphasis now is on vector control. And if you look at the progress that India has made if you look into the World Malaria Report of 2021, these are estimated cases in millions on the left side, blue line. I think our progress has been really phenomenal and very good. And similarly is the death cases, that they are plummeting very sharply. These are estimated deaths and estimated cases. And on the right side, we have the reported cases. As you know, we have one of the most robust malaria program in the world. Why do I say? Some may not like this statement, but I'm very confident about it because we have an incredible surveillance system, plus minus whatever is there. It's a huge network of surveillance workers through states, implemented through regional offices. 10% of our population is screened for malaria every year. And for a country of 130 crores plus, it's not a joke. So all credits to the program. And you can see on the right side, in the reported cases of malaria are now 1/10 as compared to 2014. So that's the kind of progress. I think we are heading towards that. Of course, there are challenges when you come close to end game, and we have talked about last mile. Dr. Manju Rahi also talked about last mile in her lecture, previous lecture, challenges. There are several challenges we are going to encounter, and that's the time we have to really step up our efforts and interventions. This is a very important paper which I came across by Wilson and others, which talks about again, the same topic, and it traces the history of vector control even earlier than 1890s when Ronald Ross discovered. And it looks like that people were attempting earlier also by environmental means. You can see the environmental management until the DDT actually came on horizon. And then the game changed. Vector control became dependent and mostly on insecticides, particularly DDT, and then malathion, and then, pyrethroids currently, and clothianidine, and other new classes of insecticides are now becoming more and more common. So this particular paper also lists, the various methods that can be directed towards adults and immatures and adults. So this is not a standalone one method that would do the trick. And if you look at the use of DDT, on which we depended heavily in earlier years, the Stockholm Convention has taken a decision to phase out DDT. And in our country, we continue to use DDT. You can see in Southeast Asia, it's primarily India that is using the DDT and is phasing out. And outside Southeast Asia, the deeper bars is the South Africa that has been using DDT, and it's now currently phased out. And that's the global production of DDT and the use in India, which is now going down. So therefore, the dependence on vector control is now more on the newer classes of insecticides, particularly pyrethroids and the LLANs in India as well. And of course, we have several methods of larval source management, and the larvicides, the biolarvicides, the IGRs, and other techniques, the minor engineering methods and all that. So if you look at pyrethroids are being used in ITNs for impregnation, whether they are plain pyrethroid nets. There are different types of pyrethroids, and they are adjunct with the PBO, which makes it, it's a synergist, which makes it more effective, or the residual spraying and the space spraying. But most of it, the space spraying is for cold fog, the aqueous delta methrin. So you can see the bulk of active ingredients of pyrethroids actually are used in the ITNs. And these are the numbers. This is a WHO slide from World Malaria Report. You can see that how many of the nets were actually manufactured and delivered in Africa and outside Africa. Bulk of these ITNs are used, about 80 to 90% justifiably are used in Africa, and these are donor-driven usages. So, and rest outside, partly like GFATM is procuring for India, but also Indian states have also started buying LLANs independently, particularly, as you know, in Odisha, some 1.13 crores nets were purchased, and now another 2 crores nets they have purchased and rolled out in the hard-to-reach area. And that has been a game changer in Odisha, because 85% reduction of malaria has been reported almost. I'm remembering the figures in Odisha. And that's a very magical thing, because Odisha used to contribute about 34 to 40% of malaria in the country, as well as deaths in the country earlier. So that's really phenomenal. And these are the new insecticides which are coming in. This clothianidine and pyrimidine methyl was there earlier, but then, its usage is picking up now because DDT is being phased out as IRS. And of course, this is a very busy slide, and I will skip through quickly. Insecticides, a number of insecticides, treated nets, alpha-cypermethrin, delta-methrin, and with PBO, without PBO, I mentioned to it. And there are combination nets we are talking about. The top panel will be of carbamates, and the side panels would be of pyrethroids. So combo nets are also likely to come soon. And insecticide indoor residual spray, there are large number of candidates that are used, and these are larvicidal methods, Bacillus thuringiensis, Bacillus, various different strains, and of course diflubenzuron. These are IGR compounds, and the tamifos, which is a organophosphorus, and it's very common, abate, and the other ones. Okay, spinoside is now making its presence in the market, and we are testing it under ICMR direction. So just to visit again, initially it was Paris green and environmental methods, then the DDT and diel drain, then organophosphorus compounds. There was resistance in humans as DDT was rendered ineffective due to resistance. People started refusing it, and then of course the pyrethroids came in. And then, we started talking about integrated vector management. No other institute other than NIMR in early 80s, and also VCRC, both of them where I'm working currently, had pioneered this concept in India. And we worked relentlessly on multiple methods of vector control, and we generated a huge amount of data through our network of field station of NIMR, as I remember. And now we are talking about IVM, and the world also is talking about the global vector control response of GVCR of WHO talks about IVM. And what about program? Yes, program also has adopted IVM. I mean, if you see the number of various intervention methods that they are propagating besides the LLAN and the space sprays and the IRS, you see battery of other methods that are being recommended and being used in the program. Of course, they are used very selectively where they are used. So IVM, I think, is the best bet, even at the last mile, I would say. Although you are mounting aggressive control, but then at the end game, you have to be very, very selective in it. It's a very rational method. You use it very carefully. You use your resources optimally. You deploy them in a very sound ecological manner. And the reason is that no one size would fit all, particularly when you have so many vectors. Some vectors are in urban areas, some vectors are in foothills. These are all ecologically different situations where you cannot use the same suit and that will fit every mosquito. So you have to actually tailor it according to the species and the local situation. And these are various methods, the tools that are there on the platter of IVM, starting from environmental methods to biological, chemical control, IGRs, and then LLANs, then the personal protection methods, of course. When people protect themselves all the time, window screening, the housing improvements, they ward off mosquitoes. Then the new approaches that are coming in, they have been there, genetic control, SITs, CRISPR-Cas9, modified mosquitoes, and of course Wolbachia mosquitoes and the attractive toxic sugar bait, which NIMR is now promoting and coming up with some new candidates. Of course, so this will go through trials. So you can direct these methods as anti-larval methods, anti-adult methods, protection against bites. Legislative measures also help a lot. And those of you who know about malaria control in Bombay, in 1912, Major Cowell produced a classical book, which is only 100 pages. If you read it, you will think that it has been written today. It's more than 100 years old book, and it must be there in our library. You please go through it. All those things are even applicable today. So wonderfully written. And he has suggested a mosquito-proof lid which was implemented, and till today it is being implemented because the huge tanks in Bombay at that time used to support Anopheles stephensii breeding, besides the other places and wells and all that. Let's come up with legislative measures. We implemented those measures in Goa and other places also. So it's so wonderful. It has to be national thing. And of course, the natural control that goes on in nature, that should not be dismissed, because mosquitoes do have their natural enemies and pathogens. They regulate their populations, they control their populations as well. So the IVM approach depends on several partners, capacity building, you have to do monitoring and evaluation, because you're applying number of techniques. And so each technique is unique in itself, in its the way it should be monitored, the way it should be delivered. So it makes the vector control little complex in that sense. And there has to be a lot of advocacy in this, and you have to collaborate with health and non-health sectors. And you have to, of course, take decisions based on the evidence, and then the operation, you have to operationalize all those methods and follow them up. And as scientists, I think we can devise a very intelligent IVM. Intelligent, why? Because we must do situational analysis wherever we work. I think we have to do a situational analysis. We should know about the vector ecology, vector behavior, seasonality, and select very intelligently our interventions, and when and to mount them and at what scale and all that. That's the job of a scientist, not the job of a program supervisor or delivery boy, the one who sprays it. He needs only instructions. So we have to do that intelligently. And of course, seasonality I mentioned, and you have to harmonize. One thing is, you must appreciate that the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, NCVBDC now, is an umbrella program. It will not direct interventions against a particular disease at the, in a particular setting. They're using the same system, and they would be using these methods against several vectors, maybe dengue vector, chikungunya vector, the same, and also LF vector, the culicines, and the malaria vectors, particularly in urban settings. So you have to take that into also consideration, comprehensive vector control as far as delivery of these different methods are concerned. So now let me give you an example where the IVM has worked, and that is Sri Lanka. We heard Dr. Kamini Mendes the other day, how Sri Lanka could conquer malaria. And this was done very intelligently. And this is one country which was, in the beginning of last century, was almost decimated by malaria. Such heavy epidemics used to be there of Vivex. And the country has now been declared malaria free in 2016. And how they could do it, we learned from Dr. Kamini Mendes. But what I'm trying to mention here is, they have also used different interventions to contain the vectors. They have used larval control and adult control simultaneously. And they did it very selectively, as I was mentioning, using environmental methods, larvivorous fish, the IGRs, and IRS, pyrethroids. They rotated the pyrethroids. ITNs they used, the LLINs they introduced. So they have used all these methods in combination and very intelligently and selectively. I happened to go to Sri Lanka in Kandy to understand how they did it. And I was surprised that in the primary healthcare system, they had all the things written up so well and explained so well by the people there, the health officials, that I could see that they had that capacity and wherewithal to achieve what they have achieved. And that is the level of confidence and the preparedness we require at the ground level if we have to really win war against malaria. You can say that Sri Lanka is just an island and small country, but then they have done it. They had huge challenge of this. And unfortunately, now the challenge is that Anopheles stephensi has invaded Sri Lanka. It has gone to Gulf of Mannar. And Anopheles stephensi is the most dangerous mosquito, I tell you, very hard to beat wherever it gets entrenched, most difficult to stamp out. And unfortunately, this is a sad story that it has made entry into Sri Lanka and has spread quite a lot. So I'm just thanking her, and all of us should thank her for bringing artemisinin and artesunate, because she has saved millions and millions of lives in bringing this. She won Nobel Prize. But I argue here, if you see this graph, you will see the dark and dark blue and the light blue. These are the cases averted in millions by LLAN and IRS. And the dark gray is the ones which were averted by the artemisinin and its derivatives. And the lighter gray is due to other causes. If that be the case, and you can see the statement, that was in Nature 2015 by Bhatt and others. The down one is the WHO World Malaria Report, which tells you that that from 2000 to 2020, most of the cases, 82%, and deaths, 95%, averted in these regions, African regions. And I'm sure bulk of them were due to the LLINs and the IRS. If that is the case, don't you think that LLINs and deserved a Nobel Prize more than the artemisinin? Of course, she deserved it, but I think, and that's a really sad story, that it is not there. And these cute little homes, must have saved millions of lives. And I think it's very important to recognize this intervention also. So I will not go into those. I think I have almost exhausted my time, and I will just rush through a few slides, and I will tell you the challenge that now the Stephen's eye has also made its presence here in the Horn region of Africa. So our vector Stephen's eye is being exported and invading new lands, and now the Africa will itself have a big challenge dealing with it, and it's not getting eliminated from those areas where it has gone. What I'm trying to emphasize is that we should not get Anopheles gambiae or Anopheles finestus in our lands. The reverse way, it will be a havoc, because they're the best known vectors of malaria in the country. Therefore, we need to exercise a great vigil in our points of entry, in ports, airports, and the ground crossings. I think we have to be very, very vigilant about that situation. And GVCR says, I will cut short, I will not read through it, says that you should have universal interventions, of course, but the bottom A and B are the base of this. All will be the capacity building and capacity strengthening in any country if you really want to control these diseases, and entomologists are really necessary. That's about global vector control response. So we are missing entomologists. You can count how many entomologists are in this room and how many were there 10 years back. That will tell you the story. The same story, you can ask this question. NCDC and National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, they have none at the moment. We are training them in VCRC, NCDC guys, and they are not entomologists. We are trying to make them somehow. The vector surveillance control, insecticides resistance monitoring, Dr. Manju is working hard with the program and with all of us to do insecticide resistance monitoring throughout the country in many states. And it is as if we have taken it upon ourselves, the routine activity, what the program should have been doing. So this is the situation. And the VCRU, the Vector Control Research Unit in Malaysia, is supposed to provide us the impregnated papers to test the insecticide resistance monitoring, and they are in short supply. Now, WHO has turned to VCRC. They have asked us to now start manufacturing the papers. We have cleared our tests, and we are launching that. Now, we will be providing these papers to India, Africa, and other countries. So anyway, ICMR is stepping up. The quality and quantity of IRS coverage and all that I have told you. And what we on our part are doing is this. Thanks to Dr. Balram Bhargava, he came to VCRC and we said that we want to we want to increase the number of seats of our MSc Public Health Entomology. You know, he said, why not make it a national course immediately? I said, okay, sir, involve more institutes of ICMR. So we then made this as a national public health entomology course. Now we have 4 more institutes which are in the line. And this year they are all launching MSc Public Health Entomology. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And also VCRC is establishing this ICE time. I don't know whether you have heard or not. This is International Center of Excellence for Training in Medical Entomology. Again, we wanted to have Center of Excellence for Training in Medical Entomology. And here instead of N, he has prefixed I, make it International Center of Excellence for Training in Medical Entomology, train Asians, and I train Africans also. And this is the building that is coming up, already sanctioned, and the work is starting soon. In a year's time, we will have this building. So we will be building the capacity of this country as well as the neighboring countries. So anyway, I'll cut short this one. I think historically, public health entomology and vector control have immensely contributed to VBD control. And I firmly believe that it has to be at the center of malaria elimination, and it's doing its job. It's LLINs are preventing a lot of deaths. IRS is preventing a lot of deaths. Nothing to take away from routine surveillance and treatment of patients. Of course, that is a very, very important component, must be there. And vector control tools have to be judicially used, and we have to enhance investment to increase access to the vector control and develop novel alternate tools, as you are doing in NIMR now, and to mitigate threats of emerging diseases, invasive vectors, insecticide resistance, enhance capacity for vector surveillance and integrated vector management, invest for new tools and research, and strengthen evidence base. I think we need a lot of evidence in order to push our viewpoint and turn them into policies. And of course, observatories to collate data on vector control and systematic reviews. And single vector control tool is not going to change much. We need battery of them, use them intelligently, train and retain entomologists to sustain vector the malaria elimination. That's the message. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashwani, for the wonderful talk and lots of insights in this talk. So, with your permission, can we take some questions?
Please.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. I'm just wanting to ask 3 key questions, which may sound very naive, but I'm not an entomologist. One is, what is the definition of vector control? 2 is, how do we measure it? Because anything which is not measurable, how can you achieve it? And number 3 is, do we still need vector control or vector elimination or vector eradication? What is the...
Very good questions. First is that whether we can measure the vectors or not. You will be knowing that there are several ways to measure vectors, and there are indices like that the per man hour density, which is done on the basis of collection of mosquitoes in 4 random and 4 fixed sites, sentinel sites. And you can continue this at fortnightly interval or monthly interval. And when you, of course, implement your interventions, you can continue to monitor what's happening in those areas. So, and there are several techniques now. There are CDC traps, there are Procopac, collectors, and there are BG traps. Several different kinds of traps are available with which you can actually measure the baseline populations and post-intervention methods. Coming to your second question about control versus elimination versus eradication. Historically, if you go through, one book has come, Mosquitopia. You can get that. it has a collection of chapters where scientists and non-scientists are debating whether to eliminate mosquitoes or not, whether it is possible to eradicate is the word which is an extremist use. You cannot eliminate a species from this earth. That is called species sanitation. It's very hard. Adam Soper tried, several workers have tried their best to remove species from certain areas, geographical areas. They make a huge comeback. It's humanly impossible unless they have invaded a small island kind of a situation, you can throw them out. If geographical boundary you cannot eliminate, they will reclaim their lost lands. So it's a never-ending process, and therefore you have to continuously use your intervention measures on and on and on and on. But there is one thing which we have learned in Goa. Goa, when this field station was opened in 1989, there was a huge epidemic, and the city is of 60,000 people, and deaths were many, and API more than 1,000. Can you believe it? 1,000 API. And that means everybody suffered once. So what we did, we first of all studied the vector, its behavior. And we found that the vector peak precedes, of course, this is nothing no-brainer, precedes the malaria peak. It's a seasonal. Then we found that in November, December, January, February, the vector actually is lying very low. It is only in few habitats. It would spread horizontally in a number of different types of breeding habitats, but when it shrinks, the populations make home the what they call it mother foci, like wells, like tanks and all that. And they were very easy to control. So, as I mentioned the other day to journalists, that in army, they say, hit the enemy when enemy is in the bunkers. When mosquitoes have shrunk, that is the time we should mount the vector control measures, not when it is on the prowl and the fire is raging and then you call fire tenders. No, prevent the fire from happening. And that is where the scientist's role is there. I have been getting this thought over many now decades, actually. Dr. Sharma, you can attempt it in NIMR. Can we have a setting which is epidemiological setting with similar kind of epidemiological situation, that you can have three different kinds of arms. One in which you actually mount vector control in the lean phase, one as is prescribed by the program, and one in the declining phase, and see when you get the best results. And that will be a kind of a policy change statement if what I'm saying makes sense. So I feel that we have to really very intelligently play this game with the mosquitoes. Otherwise, mosquitoes will always have a last laugh. Okay, I hope I have satisfied.
One small.
What's that?
How do we say that vector is controlled? Vector control is achieved.
Oh, threshold.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is very interesting question. Unfortunately, the adult threshold is missing. It is not there. But in case of adines, particularly Aedes, breed-to index below 20%, house index below 5%, and that's the threshold. And that is also very arbitrary now. In some situations, it has been seen that when actually these indices are very low, there is a very active transmission of dengue. So that is again a research question for the entomologists to really come to this situation as to what is acceptable and where the threat starts and when to act. That is very important. It's a very nice question, Dr. Sinha.
Spatial lecture. One of the main questions regarding the manpower training and engagement, काफी समय से 10-12 साल मुझे भी हो गए। मैं ये समझना चाह रहा पब्लिक हेल्थ पॉलिसी और वेक्टर बायोलॉजी एक्चुअल में अभी जैसे एडवर्टाइजमेंट पे निकली है पब्लिक एंटोमोलॉजी की VCR जो कुछ गिनी चुनी MSc पे, तो जो लोग MSc PhD करके 5-5 साल अच्छा हाई इम्पैक्ट रिसर्च भी कर रहे हैं, तो उनका क्या फ्यूचर है, वो कहाँ है जॉब?
हाँ, ये क्वेश्चन आपने पूछा है, अच्छी बात है। अभी मिशन मोड में मैं डीजी साहब के सामने बैठ गया एक दिन। आई कैन टेल देयर इज नो हार्म इन टेलिंग द ट्रूथ। मैंने उनको ये कहा कि जिस स्पेस पे एंटोमोलॉजिस्ट वैनिश हो रहे हैं, ये तो डिसिप्लिन ही खत्म हो जाएगा। तो उन्होंने कहा बताइए क्या करना है। तो मैंने कहा सर आपके हाथ में है। उन्होंने कहा मेरे हाथ में, बताइए। मैंने कहा हमें एंटोमोलॉजिस्ट की पोस्ट दीजिए, हमारे इतने इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं, सभी एंटोमोलॉजी का काम कर रहे हैं। और फिर मैंने एक दिया प्रेस्क्रिप्शन कि ये क्वालिफिकेशन होना चाहिए। हमने कभी पब्लिक हेल्थ एंटोमोलॉजी नहीं लिख के दिया, हमने कहा कि zoology with specialization and with evidence, वो हमने दिया। अब क्या एडवर्टाइजमेंट हुआ उसके ऊपर मैं कमेंट नहीं करना चाहता, बट डेफिनेटली दे शुड हैव फ्यूचर। those who have I have passed out zoology with entomology specialization. That's how I am director, and I'll be utterly selfish if I will promote only public health entomology qualification. I feel that we will not be able to provide you sufficient number of public health entomology candidates, because our target is that every municipality of India should have one entomologist. Every state should have multiple entomologists. Every district should have. Who will produce this entomologists? Vector biology. So that's very valid question, and I think some corrections were made, and now I'm close to 200 applications that are being now screened, and hopefully many of our youngsters will get positions there. No. They will have to fight for it. Of course, they will have to fight, but there are no. Hopefully that will be done. I think I have played my part. Yes.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, ma'am.
In Sri Lanka, you showed rotation of insecticides was one of the strategies they use. And that is one of the strategies to manage insecticide resistance. We always talk about it, but in India, it doesn't happen really. Even though we have shown through our studies there is resistance to pyrethroids, DDT there is resistance when we switch on to pyrethroids. Rotation has to be done in some fashion. Mosaic pattern is there, tile pattern is there. Why it is not actually happening in India when we are seeing the evidence of resistance?
A very good question, and it should be directed to the program why they are not doing it. And there is every justification that in order to delay resistance cannot be avoided as such. It can be avoided, prevented against a new candidate if you very quickly, rotate it, and you have battery of insecticides which you rotate one after another so that memory is lost and they come back, they become susceptible. It should be done, but what are the candidates that you have now? You have pyrethroids, you have the clothianidine. If it gets registered with CIB, then it will come. You have pyrimidine. You have two now, actalic and this one. So if you have to rotate them, that is the choice. Organophosphorus malathion is not a choice. Mammalian toxicity is so high, so you cannot use that. So these are the two players, and reliance on LLIN is increasing by the day. Numbers are increasing. That is again pyrethroids. People are debating whether you should use IRS with pyrethroids in the places where you have LLINs, which are using essentially the same class of insecticides. So these are million. So there your choices are limited. But again, the question is, who will take this decision at the helm of affairs in the national program?
I think it has to be done collectively.
Collectively,
because
you have to suggest.
Do it all alone.
Yep.
This will require some strategy to sit with researchers.
Yeah.
There is certain level of resistance, which is also coupled with epidemiological evidence that the disease is not coming down with the use of the insecticides or LLI. So that cannot be seen in isolation. It has to be seen with the epidemiological impact on the disease.
And Dr. Manju, there is a caveat here. The quantity and quality of insecticide spray plays more important role than the resistance itself. Reason is Africa, there are studies, you can read them, where the resistance level was pretty high. But when the spray quality and quantity was improved, that brought in the epidemiological impact on the disease. You are not anyway eliminating 80% of mosquitoes, even if you have brought down 50% of populations, even then they give you epidemiological impact, which means neither you have tools to replace them so quickly, nor you would, nobody will accept it that way also, programmatically also, because imagine a country like India, which has tons of insecticides sitting in the warehouses, and they have to exhaust that, and then the next.
They can't switch over so soon.
Oh, it's practically very difficult situation. Of course, desirable.
And the DDT, the person who invented or made the DDT got a Nobel Prize.
Yes.
So your vector control is satisfied with Nobel Prize.
No, you see, Ronald Ross got the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
He was not liked in the army because he used to always be after mosquitoes, but he got it. But question is, no, it's just a poser in the sense that when an intervention is saving so many millions of lives, how come a medallion has eluded the LLIN? That is beyond my comprehension. That's why I raise this.
They're being partial to the person who has made LLIs.
I don't know. I used to know Professor Chris Curtis, with whom I worked in London School. He was crazy about them, and I think he was among the first ones to introduce in the system in Africa first.
Yeah, we have some online questions here with me. So one of the question is, we wish that we'll achieve the elimination goal by 2030, but it persists in other parts of Southeast Asia as Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other countries. Would that affect our cause? It's mostly related to migration.
Yeah, it's related to cross-border issues and migration. See, by definition, not only from other lands, other countries, within India also, there is a possibility of malaria cases being reported. It doesn't talk about non-reporting of cases. It talks about zero local transmission. The definition of elimination is that transmission further should not, you will continue to detect the cases, which means that when you reach at a point of elimination, you will have to have a very robust system of surveillance in place, and in areas that you will mark as sensitive areas. There you must continue to have surveillance, continue to have microscopy on, continue to have RDTs, and ready to treat cases as they are detected before the transmission takes place. In order that after post-sustenance, post-certification, supposing you have a certification in hand, would you dismantle NIMR, VCRC and program and all that? No. Actually, that is the time when there will be no disease. You have to maintain that status, and maintaining that status is the biggest challenge, because a few cases would mean failure to your elimination. Now the game will actually, the work will start thereafter in 2030, once you have a certificate in hand. So that is the importance of entomologists. That's why, Dr. Our friend, we are trying consciously to make more and more, entomologists, prepare them for future. We know now that we'll be needing lots and lots of entomologists in times to come, particularly for dengue control also, and now Zika is also coming up and all that. And now in order to sustain this VL elimination and LF elimination and malaria elimination, that's being consciously done by us.
Okay, so another is source reduction is majorly done as service by applying larvicides. Is there any product that does source reduction, and what are innovations in source reductions? Are startups being encouraged in this direction?
Source reduction is done with the hands. Source reduction is done by minor engineering methods. Now, physically you can remove some sites which may be supporting breeding, but source reduction is a rather broader definition, means that, for example, overhead tanks, you can reduce the source not by dismantling the tank, by covering it with mosquito-proof lid and covering the vent pipe and all that. So, for example, in some places, diking and proper drainage system that led to draining of water and marshes and all that. That could, so minor engineering methods, source modification, and all these methods can be used for source reduction. Permanent source reduction. For example, in I have seen in Goa, I can give you example. A lot of buildings are being constructed, multi-storied, but the tank is left behind, which is underground tank, and always water collects in them and the breeding is taking place. All that one has to do is to just level it with the soil and finish it off, because you don't need that now, and you can excavate the soil when you, if you need it, you can again reuse it rather than dismantling it. All these minor engineering methods, the common sense methods we used to practice in Malaria Research Center, now your NIMR, last 33 decades, when we were young like you, we used to do all this, okay? So we used to have trolleys, we used to have pumps in our, trolleys, and we used to pump out water and all that. We have demonstrated, we used Bacillus ferricus, Bacillus thuringiensis. We also used to do a large number of things in IBM, including source reduction.
Okay, so can we take the last question and then we'll conclude?
Any number.
So maybe this is for both of the directors. Is the one question is CRISPR-Cas9 has completed 10 years, and yet we are not sure how we are going to use it for vector management. I mean, what's any one of you, your views on this?
Should be asking Dikshit.
I think he's the right guy.
I believe CRISPR-Cas is an infant stage. Actually, we should be more biology. क्योंकि जो कुछ टारगेट आइडेंटिफाई करें उनको मैनिपुलेट करने की कोशिश होगी, but I don't think that fully we understand the biology how one target will influence other. Literature is already there, and I think it is a decline. They made the CRISPR, and again after a couple of generations it become resistant to it. So failures are already there. We have in laboratory there's already symptoms that this will be again going to anti-CRISPR naturally. So we have to go some steps ahead to understand.
And there are always challenges. There are always challenges with newer technologies.
The insecticide resistant, उसका भी CRISPR का resistant बन जाएगा. That can.
Oxitec mosquitoes, we have challenges, right? Remember? So when you release them, then it's an issue.
Okay, so with the golden concluding line, train and retain entomologists.
And sustain.
Yeah. So we would like to, complete this session here. And we are very grateful and thankful to Dr. Ashwani Kumar. He agreed to be here all the way from Puducherry to here. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.